Okay, we are now in part 2. So we have a model set up. We have basic wall. That's bothering me, it's not centered right. And we have kind of like a windowsill. And we have a hole. And we have two basic pillars on either side. So, how can we improve this? Well, let's take a look at a reference. In the image up here, it's pretty clear that that hole has been extruded in, and it's even got a bevel going around the edge. You can see it right there with the lighting. And then it's kind of got a cap on the inside so that you don't see through it. So let's go ahead and start modeling that. That's pretty easy. All I have to do is select the edges on the outside here. And I'm only going to be working with 1/2. I'm going to hold down Shift, extrude edge, grab the global, and then I'm going to pull it in. Alright. Now I'm going to show you one way to make it easier to have two sides kind of being able to see it at once. So the problem that we just had is when we were working on one side, the other side was just remaining stagnant. It was the same piece of geometry that we duplicated, and there's actually a way to make it so that we can duplicate this side, have it on this side, so reversing the y or the z-axis, and still have it update whenever we're working on this piece of geometry. So the way we do that is first we select our object. Oh, it looks like my grid got scaled down. Let's see. Interesting. Display grid. If I come up here to grid, you can see you can turn off grid right here. I'm gonna hit the little checkbox. Let's see. Division 1. I don't want any subdivisions. Grid lightens every 1 unit. 12 units is okay. There we go. Now I got it back. So this was what I was talking about earlier. If you wanted to move these pillars in the middle of one of these, you can come up to subdivisions. If you type in 2 and apply, you're going to get a grid for every 1/2 meter. It depends on what kind of units you're working in. Since we're working in meters, I'd like to leave it just set at meters and then deal with the grid while I'm working. That way I don't get confused about my scale. But definitely if you want to change your grid size, feel free to. Just remember that your grid size isn't actually changing how big your objects are. It's just rendering these lines on this grid slightly differently. I'm going to close that out. Alright, so now I got my object. I have my selector is centered in the origin, which is right in the middle of the grid. I'm going to come up to modify, edit, and duplicate special. And I'm going to hit the little checkbox on duplicate special. And this gives me a couple of cool options. So this is what it looks like by default. It's got copy and parent, and these are all set to 1 by 1 by 1. And what we want to do is, instead of create a copy, which we did last time, we're going to create an instance. So what an instance does is basically update in real time with the model that we're working on. So the copy is mimicking the original. So the next thing we have to do is consider group under, and we're going to do group under parent. That's fine for now. That would change in the outliner, so this isn't very useful to us at the moment. But we'll leave it by parent by stock. And we're going to want to change the scale. So remember last time when we changed the scale, we did it over here in the channel box. We can actually do it right here in the creation. So remember we have to do it in the Z. So the way these boxes are set up, they're not labeled, which always kind of bothered me about but the way it works is X, Y, Z. Just have to remember alphabetical order. So we want to change it into Z, so I'm going to come over here into the 1, and I'm going to make it a -1. We only want to create one copy, and hit apply. I'm still getting some funkiness with the faces, and why don't I try undoing all that real quick. I'm going to come up into my history and I'm going to delete it by going up to edit and delete all by type and history. Let's see if that fixes our problem. See? Perfect. So sometimes having extra history in an object before you duplicate it will kind of confuse the system, and it'll try and render something that's not actually there. So as you're working, periodically delete your history, and since I'm at a new milestone, I'm gonna come up with the file, save scene as, and do my iterative save. Instead of wall 1, I'm gonna call it wall 2, and save as. Cool. So now I have a point where I can safely say I have like a save that I can fall back onto. If this project gets all corrupt, I can go back to wall 1. So let me show you another couple of cool things about the duplicate special, because this is actually a really powerful tool that can come in handy when you're doing loads of stuff. So if I had a new plane, I just came up here into the primitives and created a plane. I'm going to change the subdivisions to 1 by 1, so it's just one face. I'm going to rotate it so it's a little easier to see. Rotate it 90 degrees. And then I'm going to rotate it again 90 degrees, but in another axis. And you can see that when I did that, my scale manipulator follows it. So whenever the object rotates, the scale is going to work relative to that object. Now if I wanted to scale this in world like I do, I can come up here in the tool settings, and if this toolbox isn't up, all you have to do is double click on the tool, and I'm going to come under world, and I'm going to hit that, and you can see that my manipulator is now oriented to the world. And this comes in handy when you're trying to scale things like this, so that I have kind of like an elongated rectangle or rhombus. Yeah. Anyways, so what I just did is I hit insert so I can move my manipulator, and I'm going to hold down the V key, and I'm going to snap this vert right to one of these edges. I'm sorry, one of these verts. And I'm going to hit insert again, so I'm out of that mode. So now what you can see is if I was to rotate it, it'll rotate around that vertex now. So the way that becomes handy with our duplicate special, oops, it looks like that closed out. Edit, duplicate special. I'm going to hit the little checkbox again. If I was to change the scale back to 1 so that I'm only duplicating it the exact same size, and I come under rotate, you can see here is same as before, as in scale X, Y, Z. I want to rotate, I believe, in the X axis, so that would be this way, I believe. So if we change this to, actually let's think about how many copies we want to make first. So what I'm thinking about making is kind of like a pedal arrangement. So let's say I want to do 6 copies. Kind of just a round number. So the way this works is it's going to create 6 copies plus this one. Actually, so I only want to do 5. I'll do 5. So I have 1, and I'm going to have 5 more around, so that's kind of an even number. If you think about the 1 plus 5, that's 6. So you're going to have 6 copies of the same object. That means that if I wanted to have this rotate and create copies, if we were to get a full 360 degrees, we'd have to make sure this is set to 60, right? So every 60 degrees, this is going to create a duplicate. And let's just see what it makes. Cool, right? So this is an easy way to make a quick copy of anything. You can consider making like fan grills or anything that has like a circle pattern in it. This is a super easy way to do it. And because we created instances, not just copies, I can come under my object mode, and I'm going to go into, here, let me close out of this real quick. I'll go into my multi-cut tool. I'm going to create an edge here. And if I turn on the wireframe on shaded view, I can see that it actually added the edge on all these. So this is really powerful when you think about what you can do. I can go into my move tool, grab one edge. You can see that it selects all these. Ooh. I can pull that out, go on my vertex, pull that out, and in. You can start seeing that you get like a really complex looking object very quickly. So this is one way I make quite a few objects. If you were to come under the edge mode again and select some edges and do an extrude, you start getting really powerful results. Actually, no, I don't want that. I want to use an extrude based on orientation. Select both these edges, extrude edge. I'm going to grab the green selector. So this doesn't really look like anything. I didn't plan to make it look like anything, but you can see that it's very easy to make really intricate designs like window patterns and all sorts of stuff. So remember the duplicate special tool when you're going in and you're creating kind of objects similar to this, flowers, like windowsills, stuff like that. I'm going to go ahead and delete that. Alright, so the next thing I wanted to do was close in all these faces. So we're not going to be able to use the same tool that we did when we wanted to close off those faces on the bottom, the fill hole tool. At least I don't believe so. I don't think Maya's that intelligent yet. Let's try it real quick. Mesh, fill hole. No, you can see that it tried to work it out, but it doesn't know which edges to fill the hole through. And because these are two objects, it won't work. If this was one object, oh, it turned black again. Interesting. Let's try duplicating special again. Edit, duplicate special, because it just bothers me when it doesn't look right. -1. And I don't want to rotate or anything, and I only want one copy. Edit, delete all by type, history, apply. Huh, I don't know why it's doing that. That's really weird. Maya's just being a little touchy today. Anyways, we'll just keep working. So, how do we close off this hole? Well, there's another good example of multiple ways to do one thing. I think the way that I would do it is I would combine these meshes so that I could actually use the fill hole tool. So let me show you what I mean. First I'm going to select both of my objects, and I'm going to come up here to mesh, and I'm going to hit combine. And that literally just combines both meshes into one, but we have a problem. So these verts are still single verts, right? This half has its own sets of in the middle verts, and so does this side. So we want to combine those all together. So we can do this really quickly. We can just grab all the middle verts, which I just did with the marquee select tool, and come up to my merge vertices. I'm trying clicking that on default. I'm going to select one of these verts, and that seemed to work fine. Just so you know what kind of scale you're working in, if I double click on my merge verts tool, I got a threshold of 0.1, which seemed to work out well for this instance. Alright, so now we have an object complete, and I can come under here, and I can select this edge loop now, the whole thing, and I can come up to mesh, and I can come to fill hole, and there we go. So we're still going to want this object to be in two halves, and I need to get rid of this face, this n-gon, and considering that we have to make this piece two halves again, I'm going to create the first edge flow, or the first edge loop all the way down the middle, and then I think I'm just going to continue by connecting these two. And you can see that now I have another quad. But here's the problem. If I come down here, I guess it's not really a problem. I do it again, now I have a triangle. So that works for me for now, because this face doesn't really need to have defined faces. It's just going to be something that's pulled back and not really seen too often. So this edge flow works for us. So now what we can do is we can go back into face mode, select all those faces, and delete it so we get only the half side again. To object mode, edit, delete all by type, history, and then we're going to do our duplicate special once more. 1, 1, -1, 1 copy, no degrees, apply, and there we go. And we're back to our famous gray. Alright, so that's starting to look pretty good. Oh, I forgot about the bevel. Well, let's try getting that bevel in real quick. Let's see if it works with our two halves selected. I'm gonna come under my awesome modeling toolkit over here and try the bevel, and that actually worked out this time. So hooray for us! Let's work. Uh-oh. Maybe not. When I was trying to adjust that bevel, it wouldn't actually change. So let's try this. Try doing it manually. 5. Okay, manually still works. Hooray, hooray. We found another Maya bug. I think Autodesk should start paying us to find bugs. I think that would be great. Alright, so now we have our cool bevel. We have our inset face. We have a really cool looking window frame. And I'm actually going to delete these faces on the back. You see up here on the buttons on this top shelf right here, there's an X-ray mode. An X-ray comes in handy if you want to see through objects, obviously. So I'm going to go into face mode and I'm going to select those faces. On the very back with X-ray, it makes it very easy. I'm going to hit delete. And then the next thing I want to do is grab this edge loop and hold down the X key and snap it right into the middle. So what's that's doing is basically giving us as much of this face as we can get without going through the wall, while maximizing our texture space. Alright, so pretty quickly, I mean relatively, I mean it's probably been like an hour, but we've been able to get a pretty cool looking object. So what's another thing we want to do? Maybe top this off? Yeah, let's do that. So I'm going to grab a new box and I'm going to drag it up to the top. I'm actually going to, let's see, let's do this old school. So I can see under my translate Y, it's at 6.5, and I know that this box is a meter tall, so half of it's 0.5 of a meter, so I can come under here under 6.5. I know my wall is 6 meters tall. If I type 6.5 even, I'm just going to delete that 1. I know that this bottom face is meeting this top edge perfectly. That's just another way to get around the perfection. I'm going to grab this face, hold down X, snap it, and I'm going to snap this one. Let's look at our reference one more time. Oh, I see. So it's kind of inset on these, but kind of out at the bottom of here. So I think what I want to do is actually move this to the bottom. And I can see now that it's really close to -0.5, so I know it's going to be -0.5. And now my face is aligned with the bottom of these faces really nicely. So I think what I want to do is grab my edge tool and bring this edge back. Now that's starting to look pretty cool. I'm not doing this based on anything. perhaps I should, if I grab the X and if I hold down X and I move this edge, I know I'm actually snapping it onto this middle grid line. You see, just like that. So now I know, and this is all mental math, right, that this face is 1/2 meter wide. Cool. And still a meter tall, so that's looking fine. And I think what we'll do is create the artwork on this first, and then we could just duplicate it later, rotate it, and then stack it on top. Right? This is another really easy way of saving us time. So I'm going to delete that for now. And you know, in the image we have, oops, I don't want to open iTunes. In the image we have these kind of stone end caps, but there's quite a bit of detail in these, and you can see that there's the whole Greek swirl, and this is something that was most likely made in a high-res sculpting tool, like ZBrush or Mudbox, most likely ZBrush. So we don't necessarily want to make this for now. This is more of an advanced thing, so we're just going to make these pillars just straight up and down. So what else could we add that's interesting? Well, how about this? This looks pretty interesting. So what if we take this arch that we already made and we add in the detail like this? I think we could do that pretty easily and it'd look really cool. So how will we do that? Well, we can take our insert edge loop tool and put an edge in here, and you can see when I did that it actually didn't make the edge completely flat, and the reason that is it's trying to match the edge flow up here. If you did one more down here, it would try to match the edge flow down there. So I want this edge to be completely flat, so I'm going to double click on the edge loop. I'm going to grab my scale tool again, and you can see it's reversed. Yeah, it's actually pretty smart that way. It knows there's more verts facing this way, or on this side of this edge, than there is the other way. So I'm just going to grab the green tool and keep pulling it out until it's flat. And it doesn't change anything else about it, it just makes it a flat edge, which is really, really cool. Alright. So now we have this segmented into like a pretty good square. So I think what I want to do is create one more edge loop. I think that's what I'll do. And then I'm going to do the same thing down here. Cool. Now things are going to start getting a little tricky. What I want to do is pull this face in, right? We're looking at our object. You can see that there's kind of a flat cap and it gets a little flat down here. So what if you just pulled in? Well, it doesn't look fantastic. It doesn't look bad either. But I'm going to undo that. And I'm going to show you guys a quick, simple, easy way of doing this. Instead of doing an extrude, which you could also do, you can extrude this face, bring it in, and start jamming it down. It's a little messy, as you can see. You could also take this face. I'm going to make sure my extrude is undone. I could take this face and I could actually try a bevel, and that would also give me a similar effect, but I don't want to do that either. What I think I'm going to do in this instance is come back into my insert edge loop tool. I'm going to create an edge loop right under this one, and I'm going to create an edge loop right above this one. I'm trying to make this gap as close as I can, and now all I have to do is grab these faces and pull them on in. That's starting to work out for us. Cool. So now we got some interesting some more interesting looking geometry on this piece. So you can see in this instance, I'm going to turn off my, my view wireframe. You can see that the normals are acting up again. It's trying to render this as a smooth contour. Well, we can change that real quick. Grab these two edges. We come up to normals. We harden the edge. And we get more of what we're looking for. I'm going to do that with these. I'm going to do that with these down here. I'm just hitting the G key after selecting these edges. And that's looking pretty good. Now, there's some geometry down here that's starting to bug me a little bit. And what I'm talking about is this area right here. And the reason that is because although this face is technically a quad, it's stretching in 3 dimensions. So it's not a flat face. You can see that there is kind of a bending movement going on. You can see that there should be more geometry here that isn't. And I'm going to show you a quick way to fix that. You can just come into the multi-face tool. And I'm going to add a line right there. And what that did is separated this face into 2 triangles, and now it's not trying to stretch that quad into 3 directions. I'll do the same thing over here. And if I come under my edge tool, I select these edges, and I do the normals again. I think I'm going to do this one too. Now we have some better looking geometry. And what we also have is some redundant edges. So to fix that, we could just come into our interactive select and merge vertice tool. And if you don't remember where that is, that's in the mesh tools and edit mesh tools, merge vertex tool, same one. So I'm just going to pull that down, the one that we created. I know it seems counterproductive. What we're just doing is kind of cleaning up our edges. So you can see that now I have less quads. So if I undo all that, I can show you what it looked like again. So this edge isn't really defining anything. We don't really need it. Because we created this edge to flow properly, we can just get rid of this whole edge completely. Now this is what makes creating art for video games different from creating art for movies. In a movie sense, you probably wouldn't have to delete this edge, but since we're creating artwork for video games, we're going to do it because we want to save as much geometry as we can. So now we have to do the same thing up here. We can see once again we got a really wonky looking face that's like bending in all sorts of weird directions. And the way I decide where the edge is going to go is I look at my face and I see where it's trying to bend. So you can see right here that this single face is bending around these 2 verts right here. So all I have to do, oops, wrong tool. Oh, wrong tool again. I'm going crazy. Select these 2 verts, hit enter, and now we have geometry which makes sense. You can see the same thing over here. We gotta get rid of that wonkiness. Alright, and now remember what we did before. We grabbed the merge vert tool. I'm gonna pull that one down. I'm gonna undo that. I'm gonna pull it up. I don't know why. It just seems better. No particular reason. Alright, I'm gonna harden these edges once more. Normals, harden edge. Select the edge, hit G, and there we go. That's looking really good. And it's pretty simple too. So the next thing I want to do is add like a pillar in between our new created flat faces. And if I wanted to, you know what? No, I don't want to. I'm going to leave it like this. Just how it is. I think it looks pretty. So I'm going to create a new cylinder. I'm I'm going to bring it up. It's obviously way too big, so if we come under a channel box, we also don't need nearly so many faces. I'm going to make 12. And I'm going to scale that way down. Bring it up, scale it down, bring it up. That's looking pretty close. I'm just going to bring it into where I want it. Cool. Yeah, that's looking pretty neat. I like it. Adds a lot more interest to this piece. As you can see, the edges are being rendered as a hard edge. So I'm going to come up to mesh, or actually I'm going to come up to normals, and I'm going to soften those edges. And I want to make sure that my vertices aren't extending too far past my geometry because I want to optimize my texture space again. That's pretty close. And also, if I go into X-ray mode, I can see that there's still faces on top, and those definitely don't need to be there. So I'm going to marquee select everything and then deselect what I want. Delete those. Marquee select the bottom. Deselect the middle. And delete. Cool. So now I have a cool little pillar within my arch. If I duplicate it real quick, Control D, you can see what it looked like when it's complete. Looking pretty cool. I'm actually going to grab these two edges and bring them down a little bit. Grab these two edges, bring them up a little bit. Cool. That looks really neat. I like it. So, we have our two pillars. We have our big face. We have a hole cut out. We have a cool looking window with two pillars. And we have what will be either the base or the top of this piece. So, we have a lot of work to do. The first thing we want to do is start UVing, I suppose. We'll do that first. So I think the first thing I want to UV is my big wall. So if I come under polygons, create UVs, planar mapping, and I hit the box again. Let's see. We're going to want to pick the x-axis this time. I'm going to hit apply. I can exit out of this. Bring up my UV texture editor. And we can see that it's actually reversed. And this is probably why our other face was turning black all the time, is because this is just facing a weird way. No worries. We're just going to select our UVs and we're going to flip. Cool. So now it's all nice and blue. Alright, so the next thing we have to consider is how we're going to break up the holes in this mesh, because you can see that these faces right here aren't being represented in our UV map at the moment. They're completely vertical. So the texture definitely won't look right on those. And you can see that by hitting this preview display grid thing. And you can see that it's definitely stretched there. So let's fix that. If we look at our reference image, we can see that from the bevel forward we have one piece, one texture style, and then it looks like the backplate is its own texture style. So what that means is that I want to separate these edges in my UV map, and I want to cut these ones right here. So what I did is I just went into edge mode in the normal editor and I selected those. Now I can come over here in the UV texture editor and I can hit this separate UVs along selected edges. If I hit that real quick, and then I grab a UV up here and I move this shell over, you can see that now it's separated. I'm going to grab this shell, move it over, and that is our faces. This, of course, is the back wall. That's finished. And the front wall is also finished. So to save on texture space, we can move this, jam it right over onto the very end, I'm going to grab this one. We could slap it right in the middle. And that's a huge way to save on texture space because it lines up perfectly. There's still a little bit of a gap, and it's kind of nestled just right for our purpose. So the next thing we want to do is to unfold these UVs because they're still vertical and they still look like junk. So all we have to do is select our UVs and come up into the Smooth UV tool, click on that once, click on Unfold, and drag out. And it looks pretty good. It's a little crooked at the moment, and I think I actually want to fix that. So sometimes, and it's not always, but when you're unwrapping something with this tool, it won't unwrap it completely flat. You can see there's kind of an arc to this, and the reason that is because that our bevel is on the outside, and essentially what it's trying to do is create this outside a little bit larger because it is a little bit larger. So one way to fix this real quickly, and this is kind of a dirty way to do it, but there's a button up here called Align UVs to Maximum V Value. And what that means is if I select these UVs, I'm going to go into the Move tool. If I select these UVs on the bottom and I hit this button, it's going to line them all in a perfect kind of line. And I can do it again with this line, hit G, this one, G, 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 and then G. Now I have really flat edges, which is really nice because it's going to make our texturing much easier. Instead of having to conform like a brick texture along like a curve, we're going to just have straight brick texture, and it's going to conform to the geometry because our UVs are flat. So we can go under UVs again, and now we're going to select this vertical line of UVs, and then we're going to use this Align UVs vertically tool right there. And then this part's a little trickier because it's kind of bowed in. I grab those, and I'm going to do these as well. So now we have a really perfectly laid out UV shell for this portion. Now what that means is because we laid this out and it's not conforming perfectly to this shape like when it was bowing, what that means is that our textures are going to be slightly stretched, but it's going to be so slight that a player is not going to really be able to notice it much. You can see under here that it's already something that we can't see, and I almost guarantee you that this is how they did it here. Now, actually, if I look at this a little closely, what they did is, because they're really, really good texture artists and they think about this at Naughty Dog, is they put the creases of all the bricks right along the edges. So you can see if this was a brick, this would be its own brick, this would be its own brick, this would be its own brick. And the edges are where they colored in a dark space. So they might have actually done this a different way. So let me show you that real quick. And I know this video is getting a little long, but this is a good trick as well. So if I unfold this again, woo, let me go under UV space. If I unfold this again so that it's bowed, what you could actually do is select these edges, and you have to be in the Move tools to select these. And what we know is that these edges are up here. And what we know is that these edges are connecting these faces, which is creating tension between these faces. And that's why this whole UV shell is stretching like this. So I selected all those edges, the ones that are in the middle, and I'm going to hit the Separate UVs along selected edges. I hit that a couple times just to make sure it worked. And I'm going to grab all my verts, and I'm going to use the Smooth UV tool again. And what you can see is that it actually overlaps these now. So what that means is when you're coming in here and painting, you could possibly paint these a better way. In this instance, it doesn't actually work that well for us. So I think what we'd be better off doing is just keeping it where it's all flat. So I just use the undo tool a bunch of times. And now I got our big flat ones. So when we're texturing this, the way I would do it is I would put like a stone texture, and then I would paint on my edges with black to represent the separation of the square tiles. Alright. So, well actually let's move that so that we know where it is. Come back under our Edit UV tool. I want to grab this. I want to move it on the top corner. Leave a little bit of space between everything. And then we're going to start undoing, or we're going to start unwrapping more of this. So, this whole exercise, we are trying to do mirrored UVs and mirroring texture. In this case, with our arch, we have two identical sides again. So what I can do is just select one half of the whole side, delete it, and I can do a duplicate special. And because Maya's acting all weird still, it's black but it's there. And now I have this as well as this, and even this pillar we're going to do later, and then this tiny little pillar. And we can even have this right in the middle. So literally, all of our texture space can go on one half of our object and be duplicated to the other side, and we're going to maximize our texture space that way. So let's go ahead and insert edge loop on this one so we don't forget later. Kind of put it right in the middle. I'm going to select the whole thing, grab X, snap it to the grid. It's right in the middle. Alright. So, let's start unwrapping this piece. So let's look at our texture one more time. And it looks like they chose to do this outside is like a brick, a big tiled brick, or smaller tiled brick, and then the inside is kind of like a different texture altogether. So what that tells me is that what we could probably do is just separate these faces from the rest of the faces. So I'm going to grab these inside faces, and I'm going to create UVs based on planar again, and that's in the x-axis once more. Create planar mapping, x-axis, apply. We come up to our UV texture editor, and you can see that it's red once more. So all I have to do is grab the whole thing and flip it. Pretty blue. Oops. I'm going to grab my UVs and I'm going to drag them down here and move them out of the way. So the next thing I know is that the rest of these faces are all kind of contained. So let's see what happens if we try to get all those faces on one shell. We'll see if that even remotely works. So first I'm going to select all the faces, and then I'm going to come under my UV texture editor and deselect the faces that we already UV'd. And I did that by just holding down Control and marquee selecting. So now I'm going to create UVs, planar mapping. And we get these. Let's flip it once more so it's not so red. Oops, wrong way. There we go. Alright, so if we were to look at our checker tile, we're going to see that we're getting a lot of stretching still. So we still have to unwrap this. Let's see what happens if we just try a normal smooth on this. Oops. Interesting. It looks like it chose to make this face separate from the other faces. Let's see if it did that with the rest of them. It sure did. For whatever reason, it didn't attach all these faces into one object. I'm going to come over to face. I'm going to select all these faces again. Create UVs, planar mapping. Let's see. Let's just apply this one more time. See if that was just a fluke. Huh, very strange. So you can see that it actually detached all of our faces in our UV shell, which is very strange. You don't see that too often. So what can we do? Well, let's see. What would be the best option? Well, let's try something first. Edit, delete all by type, history. Maybe it was our history that was freaking us out. I'm going to grab all these faces by selecting, deselecting those. Create UVs, planar wrapping, project. Still red, flip. Did it work? Still didn't work. I'm gonna undo. So I have my faces selected. And let's just try an automatic unwrapping. Whoa, it made them huge. I'm gonna scale these down because they don't need to be so big. Alright. Let's see if that even made remotely nice looking UVs. No. My mind is just freaking out. I'm gonna take the break on this video. I'm gonna stop it and we're gonna come back. I'm gonna see if I can solve my issue with Maya, and I'll come back and I'll let you know how I fixed it.